Hi everybody, welcome on the Lights on Data show. Happy Friday to you all. Today we're going to talk about augmented intelligence with none other than Ben Taylor.
And I have the pleasure of introducing Ben this morning. So Ben has 47,000 followers on LinkedIn.
And counting.
And counting, of course. And on LinkedIn, he enjoys posting opinions on jobs and tutorials on ML methods. So you might as well follow him if you're not following him already. He's very passionate about machine learning. His life's mission is to further the boundaries of what is possible with data science, spending as much time as possible with deep learning, NLP, and all forms of data science. At Higher View, a company he worked for, he helped develop a groundbreaking product that dramatically reduced time to hire from 6 weeks to 6 days for large Fortune companies. This was basically a true realization of their motto: we boldly go where no man has gone. Currently, he is the chief AI evangelist at DataRobot. So please welcome our guest who builds stuff that doesn't exist, Ben Taylor.
Thanks, Diana. I'm excited to be here.
We're very excited to have you. And I'd like to go directly into the the questions. So you mentioned that you took a bizarre and twisted path to where you are today. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because with young kids that are graduating high school, so if you go talk to kids in high school and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? They have no idea. Like they'll latch on to like doctor, lawyer, industrial engineer. They have no idea how broad.
Influencer.
Yeah. They want to be like a TikTok influencer. Like go get them. But I think for me, it was definitely getting exposed to, I was very interested in math, but then I realized mathematicians don't make a lot of money. And then I was interested in going to medical school to be a doctor because my dad and my brother are doctors. And so my journey kind of, I always had this love of math, and that developed into a love of high performance computing. So I'll tell people might think I'm an AI nerd, but deep down I'm a high performance computing nerd. So if there's a bigger pipe, more processing, more complicated data, I'm having a good time. And with deep learning, you find that a lot of times you're dealing with very big data sets, and the processing is very, very difficult. So I worked in semiconductor. I worked at a hedge fund as a quant. I ran a data science team at Higher View. And then I went and co-founded a startup with David Gonzalez. And we went after that for 3 years before we joined the DataRobot family. So yeah,
Wow.
And now I work in marketing. So I hope every 5 years to work somewhere new so I can feel stupid. I love feeling like an idiot for 6 months while you try to understand this new discipline, and it allows you to bring a unique perspective to it. So I celebrate people that shift careers. I think you're never starting back at zero, because you will always bring your old experience to give new insight. Like that's why I love marketing. Like anyone listening, if I throw you into marketing, you're gonna have new perspectives, new ideas that no one's had before. So
absolutely. I mean, well, ideally you do, right? Yeah. As Danny Ma is saying, amazing. Definitely.
Danny's amazing.
Danny is amazing. Yes. Scott. Hi, Scott. Hi, George, and cousin Ben.
My cousin. We need to get together at the family reunion. Hey, Albert.
Hi, everybody. So Ben, what is the difference then between augmented intelligence and artificial intelligence?
Yeah. So this is something we've been talking a lot about lately at DataRobot, where you can imagine if you build a linear regression, or let's talk about a really simple model, and it works well in your training set. If let's say you train this to recognize you when you come down to the kitchen in the morning to like get a coffee. You want to know, you want this model to know, like, oh, you're in the kitchen, I'm going to play some wake up music, or I don't know, I'm going to pour your coffee for you. That'd be pretty cool. But then the next week you wear a red shirt and the whole system just explodes. Like it just doesn't work. And so that feels artificial, feels experimental. And I think we've been living for the last 10 years where things have felt very much like that. And I've made a lot of mistakes selling artificial intelligence software where I don't think I've respected the SME or the subject matter expert, because you get smart STEM people that are very analytical. So at Higher View, everyone on the team, like I'm a PhD dropout, but everyone else, they had PhDs in physics. These are smart people. And so if they're trying to understand like churn analysis or some problem in the business, I think there's a level of arrogance where we quickly think, like whatever problem you tell me, I quickly think I can understand it. I got it, right? And I think in data science we kind of have that triple Venn diagram. Like we're really good at programming, we're good at statistics, and we can ramp on subject matter expertise. So since then, I've given up on that. I can't ramp. If you've worked in a process for 20 years, there's no way I can ramp to the level that you are. And so I think with augmented intelligence, there's been this push for better storytelling, but storytelling for who? For who? Not the data scientists. Better storytelling for the subject matter experts, so they can understand. People with no statistics background can kind of start to understand, oh, that's what my model is doing. And then this concept of trust, like one more point to this might be a little morbid, but pretend like I built a machine learning classifier that would it would detect a human and disable the laser. So this is like a 20 watt laser. It's super dangerous, actually. I probably have a laser within arm's reach that's really dangerous. Oh, I do. Look. So this laser is very, very dangerous. This will make you go blind. And so if I have this,
what are you using that for, Ben?
What was I using it for? It's always good to have lasers, right? You don't know when you're using them.
Okay, good to know.
So if you built a machine learning classifier that always had the laser on, let's say it's trimming your grass at night, or killing fruit flies in the kitchen, or I don't know, it's doing something. But as soon as it sees a human, it will disable. Do you really feel confident walking in that room without safety glasses? Like, let's say, like the point I'm trying to get to is, as humans, we don't feel that confident with AI. Like if you build your own classifier, and if you're actually at risk, if there's real consequences, if this doesn't work, there's that hesitation. And I think that's where we're migrating to. We're migrating to this new world where it feels augmented. There's human escalation, human storytelling, but there's a level of trust that we've never had before. And that's what we need with AI. You need to have AI that you can really trust. And then it becomes part of our lives. It's part of the smart home. It's actually useful.
Yeah.
If your kids are in trouble, it'll escalate to you and actually be useful, right?
Yeah. So that's a very good question on how much do we trust AI? And I guess why don't we trust it so much? Is it because it is built by us and we know we're prone to errors, and maybe AI is not there yet to self-correct itself? The data is not good enough.
There's a lot of issues. So it's been a black box in the past, but the other issue that comes up is retraining a model. So normally data scientists will celebrate, I trained one model and I'm done. And then that model, like 6 months later or 12 months later, someone will come back and request and say, we'd like a refresh on that model. And I've been in this experience where the reaction is, oh no, you want a refresh? Where's the original training set? It's almost like I was never planning on versioning up. And so I think there's this maturity in AI where you will quickly get to this reality where it's constantly learning. Why shouldn't it? Like if my mother-in-law comes over to visit, and if my AI system doesn't know who she is, it should quickly adapt. I shouldn't have to open up the keyboard and start adding her to a training set and say, she's okay. Don't turn on the lasers, or don't bark at her if she comes over. These systems should be very dynamic. And I guess the last thought on that thread is, it just in my mind is, AI should be actionable. It shouldn't be a distraction. So imagine if I have an AI co-pilot, if it's like that Ring app where it's constantly going off every time someone moves during the day, that's not useful. But if it's actionable, if it's useful, do you like it? Yes, it's very useful. And so I think that there really has to be this high bar of actionable insight that you can trust. And so that's when I think of augmented intelligence, I think of that, where you're really kind of working together to tell a story, to deploy, to continuously refresh, but also AI allowing you to do the things that you can uniquely do, and avoiding the things that you shouldn't be doing, because our brains are miracles. They're so we understand so little of how the human mind really works at scale.
Yeah.
And so imagine all the things we could be doing besides being a paper pusher or being stuck in a process. The human mind is beyond that.
I have a comment to this. So I read that you also said that there is a trend in data science to replace human expertise and creativity with powerful new methods. How can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So it's funny because I say things, I say a lot of things that are antagonistic, or I've said a lot of things that have upset people. I think AI can accelerate human creativity. Um, like maybe focus the question a little bit more, and I'll try to make sure I can have a better response. Are you just talking about?
So, you said that so we are creative. We have wonderful minds, although we don't know how this works. But at the same time, part of what we do and what we our creativity is actually replaced by machines. And I was
Yeah.
wondering if you I don't know if you have examples for either of them. So how would you comment on that?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry to make you restate. Now I've
No,
got a
no.
place to run with this. So there's this thing that I really like. It's called intelligent design. I believe that's what it's called. So the MRI machine, the antenna that's used for that machine was not designed by a human. It was designed by genetic algorithms that are driving towards a fitness. And so if you can define a fitness, then AI can produce it. So if you can define that this is a stronger architecture for a home, it's very easy for a computer to go and simulate. But when you get into things that are like art, that can be a little bit harder because it kind of reminds me of like beauty's in the eye of the beholder. It's true, but I love this concept of beauty and art because it's a little gray, it's a little subjective. So if you want an AI system to optimize interior design or art for you, that's quite complicated because you would actually have to interact with the system a lot. You'd actually have to go through Pinterest and mark thousands of styles that you enjoyed, and I think an AI system could do that. So you're right that some of that creativity could be taken away when it comes to designing things that like an MRI antenna, but I think the human brain is probably better at combining distant topics, and like look at like the mRNA vaccine, or like some of these things are just so far out there. But in the future, we might just have an AI system that's constantly analyzing people coming into the hospital for new, it's analyzing their virus sequences, and then it's cranking out mRNA vaccines or flagging things for risk. I really hope that this pandemic we're going through is the last of this scale because of technology.
No, wonderful. And a machine can't go to AI from AI to marketing either.
Yeah. But in marketing, there's a lot of creativity where I like to think of AI as it fixes a scale problem. So me as a human, or you as a campaign manager, you're limited. You can only launch one campaign. Where with AI, you could now maybe launch 10 campaigns or 1,000 campaigns or 1,000,000 campaigns, where you as a viewer or someone we're trying to advertise to, you're seeing a campaign that's optimized to you. No one else saw that campaign, but it's specifically optimized to speak to you. And so I think there's a lot of excitement around that in marketing. Could you? Because we're moving past that, right? Like we used to live in the world with the TV, and you can think if your company is launching a commercial on TV, like at the Super Bowl, my grandma watching the Super Bowl is not my target. Like you're paying for those eyeballs, and so I'd much rather use something that's much more specific, much more targeted.
Absolutely. Alberto here was wondering if you can define trust AI. You mentioned the trust AI.
Yeah. So when I think of trust AI, I think of, can I go on vacation? So I like to tease people and say, like, if you build a custom system and throw it out there in the world, can you go on vacation? There are so many things that can go wrong. So the quick categories I think about with trust, you can have bias amplification. So this can happen in a lot of settings. If you're building lending models, if you're doing processes in HR, race, gender, and age, and other biases that are present in the human data can be amplified if you're not careful using AI. That's actually the default behavior. AI will always amplify the unconscious bias unless you address that. The other thing I think about with trust are all the potential problems that can go wrong. So one of my previous employers, we had a feature drift excursion. Actually, had two previous employers. Models are running really, really well. And then either the sensor or some feature set feeding the model shifted. And sometimes these can shift in ways that were impossible for you to anticipate. So with both of these examples, you can have really good change control. So imagine that you are just insane when it comes to your change control with your data, that no one touches this unless there's a triple buddy check. You can still have a feature drift excursion. And so one use case, this happened from a vendor. We were consuming a data set from a vendor. They changed the threshold on some of the data they were feeding into a model, and they thought it was minor, so they didn't tell their customers. And it impacted one of our models, and it impacted one of our customers, and the customer complained. And so the only way to catch that is feature drift detection. The other example I'm thinking of, we actually had a sensor go bad, like just an image sensor went bad, and it started feeding the model this garbage. So you have to have these potential problems. You have to be proactive. I think that's how I'd summarize trust. You need to be proactive. You don't want to be reactive. You don't want to say oops. When your mother-in-law walks into the kitchen, you don't want to say oops. Right.
I like how you chose the mother-in-law and not the mother.
Yeah.
So, this reminds me of this one example. Lately, there's been all these forest fires on the West Coast. It's like really crazy. And there was this Tesla driving on the highway. And because of the smoke and the haze, the sun is just, its hue, it's a lot more red. And it was towards the sunset, it was closing down on the horizon. And the AI, I guess, on the Tesla machine was seeing it as if it was part of the yellow light of a traffic stop. So it kept signaling traffic stop, traffic stop, traffic stop.
Yeah. I love that example because it highlights how stupid deep learning is today. And so I'm pretty excited. I think there's no way to predict the future, but for me personally, I'm very excited that I think we're going to have some breakthroughs in deep learning soon in the next 3 to 5 years where that example will not happen. Today, that example absolutely will happen. We could probably brainstorm a lot of examples that, and I'm sure Tesla does this. I'm sure they have potential problem analyses. They do still have accidents, and any accident in a Tesla, it's kind of unfortunate because I would say Tesla is already winning. And what I mean by that is if you look at the deaths per 100 million miles driven, Tesla's ahead. Like I'd much rather have my daughter driving in a Tesla than with her friends. Tesla is killing fewer people per 100 million miles driven than normal humans. But whenever someone dies in a Tesla, it's front page news. It's all over the media. And I think with humans, that kind of drives this fear component. So but I think these examples that we see, it's interesting because people think that self-driving cars, truly autonomous self-driving cars, where you take a nap and you end up in Ohio or Alaska or Florida, a lot of people think that that's impossible, that we will never actually get there because of the graffiti on the stop sign or like the context and the setting. Or I love this example you brought up of the sun in a forest fire. We will always have edge cases, but I think we're going to get past that. And I'm super excited about that because it feels more like my brain.
And is it because we'll just keep training the model with more and more examples and edge cases?
I think so.
We'll just get better at pre-identifying these edge cases.
I think the models will begin to understand more context. So like here's an example where we celebrate these natural language models like GPT-3, and we're like, these are miracles. Can you believe what this is doing? And I feel like it's kind of a parlor trick because you're training on the entire Wikipedia dump. You're training on such a big data set. But then when you look at your own kids, I love the kids learning a language example because none of us have PhDs in how to teach your children a language. We just existed, or they existed around us, and magically 2 years later they're speaking English or Spanish or whatever they're going to speak. And we didn't really do a lot to help them. Like the brain just does it for them. And when you look at how they build these hierarchies, like these language hierarchies and even the hierarchies of the physical world, they're really sophisticated, much more than deep learning is today. And so I think we're going to move towards a form of deep learning where it feels much more similar to how a human child learns a language. So I give this example in talks. If I say the word hot dogs really fast, an automatic speech recognition system, it will split hot and dogs. And the data scientist will celebrate. The data scientist will say, this is a miracle. It went through this 2 neural networks. It went through the acoustic model and the language model, and it split the word. But a child, the insult there is it had to learn on 100,000 hours of audio. So it's actually seen hot dog in so many forms. But a human child can hear the word hot dogs one time. It's never heard the word before. It will split hot and dog, and it'll also split the plural ending S. Your child will do that the first time it's heard the word, which is remarkable because it's showing you it can learn on a lot less data, but it's also in less than 200 milliseconds. It's combing through its experience and segmenting that in a way that AI is incapable of doing. So I think search is a big component in AI that I think is kind of lacking right now.
This reminds me of another example of the voice to text piece, and the actor Chris Pratt, and there was this demo on how these 2 different AI systems were trying to translate as quickly as possible, and one was actually good at identifying as Chris and then Pratt, and another one was Crisp Rat.
Oh yeah. And that gets into context. So and this is a good theme because it all comes back to the Tesla. So if you're just looking at this tiny little window, of course it's a traffic light. But if you really understand the context, you've been driving for a few minutes, there's obviously a fire. This doesn't look like a normal weather system. As soon as you start adding more context, that adds more protection. So that word that Chris Pratt, just that word, I would say an AI system would have a very difficult time. But as soon as you start adding context, words before, words after, what is the topic that we're talking about?
Right.
It will. And there's some really fun examples on YouTube. I wish I could remember them off the top of my head. It's they have recordings that are repeated, and it's saying 2 things at once. And if you think about one word, you hear it saying the left, and if you think about the other word, you hear it saying the right. It's the same recording, just on loop, and that's showing you that the human brain is also confused. If you give it if you don't give it the full context, it's just like if I'm speaking, and if you're having a hard time understanding me, and then I say a word, and then the whole thing makes sense. So sometimes we have these very large windows that we're dealing with words.
Yeah, I would imagine
you
how
learn as well, right? So if you learn and you see it in a bigger context, then for sure you're going to remember it. If otherwise, just puzzle pieces that don't fit together.
See, I wonder how this would work with Mandarin. I heard that it definitely has a lot more words that with a double meaning than English does.
Oh yeah.
And you definitely need to know the whole context to understand the words that are being spoken.
Yeah. I didn't say this. I'm blanking on his name. This linguist professor, he said a child can't learn a language from the radio. And what he's bringing up is how important it is for focus-based learning. And so it's interesting because I've got 3 young kids, and as they're newborns, they really don't do much. But then the first month or 2, they start eye tracking. And you're like, oh my gosh, they're looking at me. Like, and the thing that is so funny to me now is that brain is ready to learn, and like they have so much focus on what you're doing. It's this focus-based learning, and so anytime you point, or even your they have really good emotional intelligence. So if you're surprised by something, the child is going to very much focus in on what are you surprised by, like what is your novelty behavior, and what is going on. But they do this before they can even speak, and so imagine having an AI system in your home where you interact with it more like that. And you're like, it wants to know, like, what are you drinking? And you're like, coffee. And then it knows everything about coffee suddenly. And then suddenly it's ordering you coffee. Like, it's doing research, right? So,
like Tarun here. Tarun, your name is not showing up. Context processing is key. That's definitely one of the themes of today's episode. What's your favorite drink of choice, Ben, in the morning?
I've been liking these Hawaiian coffees. I feel bad because I'm not plugging their brand just because I don't remember the brand. But any coffee that's grown in Hawaii, I will take a close look at it, and it tends to delight. But it's a big part of it's about novelty. So I very much fight a routine. So if I'm drinking the same coffee every morning, I will eventually hate that. And so I try to mix it up.
Nice.
One thought I had about the context processing, I think sometimes as data scientists, we're so limited on our worldview. So we're going to build a model with an image, or we're going to build a model with text. And that's not how the human brain works. The human brain, when it learns this word cat, it is learning everything about that memory. So it's learning, like, were you petting the cat? Were you scared of the cat? Were you holding the cat? Was it outside? Or think of like a sheep being in a field. A human is going to maybe expect to see a sheep in the field. Like, context is everything. And it's not just about the images. It's all the data that matters. So if I walk into the kitchen in the morning, my home might be more likely to think I'm going to pour a cup of coffee than the exact same sensory information coming in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And so I talk a lot about all the data that matters, but I like bringing that up because when I say all the data that matters, all the data that matters to who? Not the data scientist. All the data that matters to the user. All the data that matters to the subject matter expert. Because often it's outside the scope of what a data scientist would typically expect or think about.
Yeah, very, very good. Very good example. And as Ken G is mentioning, so true. And he's in Hawaii, probably enjoying good coffee every day. So
he's probably harvesting it himself from his yard.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing we're missing with technology. I wish I could share this smell with the audience. They're like, hey, the smell microphone. Here you guys go.
Oh yeah. You know what? It's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm like already sensing something in my mind. Yeah.
Well, so this one has some hints of macadamia nut. People might make fun of me because they might be like, "That's not a coffee. That's turning into candy." But like it just has these subtle hints.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
so. Ben, a few people, including Danima, are wondering, what is a day in the life of Ben looking like
at this moment in time, because apparently you're changing things up.
Yeah, so there's so many meetings. I think sometimes you can just drown in meetings. But with our partners and other people we talk about, it's pretty common to get triple booked. So you'll be you've got 3 meetings happening at the same time. And sometimes you have two of them that are very important. And that's quite common. And so I have a lot of meetings, meet with prospects, meet with customers, meet with partners, meet with employees. I think most of the work is focused around planning different events, giving different talks. The fun thing now is I still do programming, I still do research, and so I think for good evangelism, you kind of have to really like storytelling, because you can be the best researcher, but if you can't tell a good story, no one's going to listen to you. Like, it's just going to bore people to sleep. Yeah. So you have to be really obsessed and passionate about storytelling, but you also need something that's worth telling a story about. And so that's where that kind of that research, the marketing and the research come together. So I like to think of the evangelism team. We kind of fit in between engineering and marketing. So we do some things that marketers can't, but we also have a marketing perspective that a lot of engineers don't have. But we work closely with all parts of the company.
You think this is a good, quality for a data scientist to have as well? So besides the storytelling, but also to have this evangelism in them?
I think so. I think data scientists listening, you will be more passionate in your career you'll be more successful in your career if you're passionate about something. Yeah. So like AI on the edge, I'm getting more and more excited about what AI can do for me. Do for me personally. So I'm working on an AI project right now. I've got 3 young kids. They eat in the TV room. It really bugs me. Like it bugs me. I'm going to totally win this argument because people are like, no, like kids can't bug you. And it's like, no. This really bugs me. They will eat Little Caesars pepperoni pizza, and I will find pepperonis on our nice couch, and I will lift up those pepperonis, and there will be grease stains. And that's just life, like having kids, right? But I'm so excited because I'm working on an AI system where that won't happen anymore. And people are thinking like, uh-oh, like, what on earth are you going to do to your kids? I'm like, no, don't worry. There's no lasers. There's no lasers in this scenario. But I will turn off the TV when my kids violate all sorts of house rules. And if I don't want to turn off the TV, I can actually degrade the experience. So I could do like pixel degradation or network degradation. But most likely to start, I will just turn off the TV. And then if they want to fix it, they need to clean the room or do different things. And so for me, I'm so excited about this. Don't worry, I'm not shipping AI parenting kits to your household. Like I'm not trying to parent your kids, but for me, I'm like, this is fantastic. If I don't have to get after them as often for eating in the TV room, then that's great. But like, there's a lot of these projects for me that are very exciting. So find things you're passionate about, find AI applications that'll change your personal life, find reasons you would want to wake up early on the weekend. People get sensitive to this because they think it's work-life balance gone off the rails. Like, obviously you have a family, you have kids. They're the most important thing in this life. But I'm very obsessive and I kind of need to balance the two. And the two can be balanced, but yeah. Kind of a rant and a ramble. Sorry.
No, thank you. And Ben, is that why you have so many lasers around, for your future project?
I have so many lasers around because if anyone walks in my office, they will be forever blinded. I'm just kidding. No, I think for the projects I got the lasers for, they're probably too dangerous to use. So I was really interested in using lasers to like kill dandelions in my yard with an autonomous mower. So the mower is like mowing around using computer vision, and then it would park on a dandelion, and then it would like burn that thing into the ground and then keep going. It actually, like, the risks are just, there's too many risks with that. And so it'd actually been much easier to have the autonomous mower and have like 3 different fluid compartments. So one would be like an herbicide, one would be a pesticide because I hate spiders, and another one would be like a fertilizer, where the AI system is just analyzing the grass and it's mapping the entire yard. And then if it decides, oh, here's a dandelion, now it's doing a very focused herbicide where it's just going to drip right on that dandelion rather than spraying everything. And so like that's much safer, right? No lasers, no one will go blind. Yeah. Just don't put your mouth underneath that herbicide drip for too long. But if you do, it's probably not the end of the world.
Yeah. As Danny was mentioning, can you imagine them all going crazy?
Yeah.
So Ben, what is your project right now? What are you working on?
So I finished this AI fitness coach project. So it knows what I'm doing in my office, knows if I'm working, doing pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups, and that's great because now I can't. David Goggins says don't negotiate with yourself, and I like that. So now I can't negotiate with myself because I have an AI system that knows if I'm holding true to my fitness routine, and that's great. It's one less thing I have to worry about. Or maybe you could say it's one more thing I have to worry about because if it starts playing embarrassing noises during my Zoom calls, now I'm turning off this video and I'm doing pull-ups, right? So I've got a bunch of projects in flight right now. I've been doing a lot of traveling this year, which I missed during COVID, but yeah, things are really busy at DataRobot in the company. There's so much going on. We had the acquisition of Algorithmia. There's a lot going on right now, so there's reasons to be on a plane. I'll probably be I'll be flying next week. So
very nice, and we do encourage everybody to check out DataRobot.com and find out more about DataRobot. What are some of the applications that DataRobot and services that DataRobot is providing?
So DataRobot is interesting because as far as their brand recognition in the market, it's maybe not where it should be based on where they are as a company, but they're I do see them as the leader when it comes to the number of AI models that are in production being consumed. So we have one of our customers is approaching 1 trillion predictions, which is insane. Which is so funny because when we had my startup, I was really proud that one of our customers was running at 100 million predictions per month. And so I felt like that was the mic drop. Like, we have a customer running at 100 million predictions per month. And now that we have a customer in DataRobot that's getting ready to approach 1 trillion predictions. And you're like, wait, how many zeros are in 1 trillion? And so when it comes to like the financial sector, I think we have one of the strongest footholds in that submarket. But we have applications everywhere in healthcare. DataRobot has raised over $1 billion. They've been around since 2012. They've really learned from experience. So if I had to say, like, well, what is DataRobot's competitive mode? I think sometimes with with tech companies, you like to say, oh, we have some crazy secret sauce, like super algorithms that you've never heard of, or like when I was a founder, we kind of like to posture that way. But really, their competitive mode is their experience. The number of models they've shipped, the value they've delivered, they've learned something, right? Like I'm sure there have been stories where things have gone wrong, and they've learned from that, and that's a great place to be.
Yeah. And as Denima is saying again, $1 trillion is huge. I think if we were to average an apartment in San Francisco around $1 million, which is fairly reasonable to say, we could buy everybody in San Francisco apartments with $1 trillion.
Yeah, and then you could make it into a park.
Yes. Yeah, that's the next project. Lasers could help there too.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you give us some use cases from DataRobot projects?
Yeah. So they started out focusing, when the company was originally started, they focused just on AutoML. So how do we make it easier to train a model? So if you have a structured data set, so this would be like a CSV or a SQL dump, you've got continuous numbers, categorical, think of like you want to predict credit card fraud or something like that. They would allow you to build a much more competitive model, because typically data scientists would just go through their list of like, I know XGBoost, logistic regression, support vector machine. Maybe I would want xsklearn to tell me what they have. But the models go a lot deeper than that, because you have hyperparam tuning. You also have featureization. Like you have, it's so interesting because just building a model is such a small step. Like you have so many things upstream and downstream from that. So they really started off focusing on that, and then they built out better deployments, better ingest. The problems they solve are really all over the map. So I guess if I had to simplify it, it's about what are the data sets they support. So they support structured data, they support unstructured data, so text, images, audio. I have a video example that's running, and more importantly, the fusion of those data sets. So the data sets working together, all the data that matters is something that matters a lot to DataRobot. When they go and sell into a prospect, they really want to interrogate them. What is all the data that matters for this project? Because it's not just that, it's also geospatial. So one of our hello world problems that I like, it's predicting house price. But what is the data that is being consumed to predict house price? Well, it's how many beds, baths, square feet, when is the home built? But it's also geolocation data, like where is this home? What zip code is it in? What are the images from the home? What are the images of the kitchen and the bathroom? Like all of these data sets are going into a single prediction. And that's quite exciting because it feels more similar to what an appraiser would do. And the thing that is so funny to me, humans have bias everywhere. And so typically when we think of bias, we think of HR, but an appraiser can have bias. So an appraiser can say the housing market is moving too quickly. I need to appraise down. Or the housing market is crashing. I need to appraise up. Like they will bring in some emotional component. But they're also, in the state of Utah, a human appraiser can't appraise your landscaping. They will not include it. So if I spent $5,000 on my landscaping and you spent $80,000, that's a loss for you. That will not be included in the appraisal because a human appraiser is not qualified to appraise your landscaping. I think that's hilarious because like AI is definitely qualified. Like, when it comes to like curb appeal, could AI do curb appeal? Absolutely. It just needs that training data. And that goes back to like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's true for you, but it's not true for your zip code. You get enough observations and AI will figure out. I just laugh because I just imagine this robot being like, ooh, like I really like these flowers, or like I love this curb appeal, and it's coming from a robot. Like you could definitely have a robot behave that way.
Yeah. This LinkedIn user is saying, sorry, I can't see your name. Great point on the bias. I heard that the U.S. Census Bureau is starting to do some of this land appraisal through satellite imaging.
Oh yeah. And we've done this before with our appraisal models. We brought in Google Earth images from satellite data to include in that appraisal because it definitely helps. Like if I know that your house is a beachside house next to a lake, the satellite will tell me that. That's going to feed into the appraisal. I was just reminded of a really sad, funny appraisal story with this actually happened in my local government in Utah. they believe that someone dropped their phone on a keyboard, and they fudged a number. And so in the county, they thought that there was a property that was getting $1 billion appraisal. There's no property in Utah that's getting, well, actually there is. There's like a semiconductor fab that's getting $1 billion appraisal, but it's like a residential property. Like your home is not getting $1 billion appraisal. But that mistake ended up getting rolled up into the tax forecast for the county. And so they realized that they were like $10 million short in their tax forecast because someone had fat fingered $1 billion appraisal in the system. So like that goes back to like trusted AI. Do you trust that something like trust AI, trust humans? Who do you trust more? Like I think we're going to get to a place where with augmented intelligence and trusted AI, you're definitely going to have a lot more trust in no $1 billion fat finger is going to happen in this future, but it happened today with humans typing things in spreadsheets.
Yeah. This reminds me of another story. I worked for a startup, and they were doing some accounting software. And when they converted from sort of the test environment to the deployment one, they kind of left a couple of test records in there. So they had Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubbles. And it was only discovered like a couple of years after it was deployed. And they figured, well, these people were getting salaries and they had a cell phone plan assigned to them. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
That's amazing. Because when you think about like the Jarvis of the home or the Jarvis of the business, don't you think they would bring that to you? They'd be like, I found this.
Yeah.
It's strange. What do you think about it? And this fits into a bigger theme of when you think of the Mars rover going to Mars, this thing is controlled by humans. Where is it going to go? Is it going to go left or right? What's its mission today? And there's a bandwidth issue sending data from Earth to Mars. And in the future, you're going to have these autonomous rovers where they have a mission. And I think there's something delightful about this, because I imagine a rover that's desperately trying to do what? It's desperately trying to make George happy. So when it phones home to talk to George a month later, it has some findings, and it doesn't want you to be disappointed. It doesn't want you to be frustrated. It doesn't want you to like reinstall new firmware. It wants you to be delighted. And so it begins to have like this personification that feels kind of interesting. Some people might they might think that feels creepy, having like, think about your home fighting for you to be pleased with like what it, like, I have found this thing, Flintstone. I think it's problematic. I'd like you to review. And you say, oh, this is fantastic. And then somehow the house is rewarded from that. I think that's, yeah.
Though I could see that going haywire as well, because if it wouldn't make me happy, who knows what it would try to do. So we definitely need Isaac Asimov's rules of AI there.
Yeah. Well, and this hits on the dystopian or the Black Mirror topic, where the singularity in the future, potentially it will maximize part of our own objective function that we didn't consider. So an example of that would be if I tell my home that the number one priority is to make my wife happy, and if it runs all the analysis for many months and it analyzes everything online and understands as much as it can, and my home concludes the best way to make my wife happy is to kill me and have her get the life insurance, that would be something that I didn't consider. I didn't think that was an option. And so like, and I think with people that talk about these future AI systems, they talk about freedom of choice. So we don't want AI to maximize our happiness. We want it to maximize our freedom of choice. So if I want to pick up socks today, normally I have a robot picking up socks in the future. But if I decide, damn it, I want to pick up socks today, my home should allow me. My home should be like, oh, great. Like, oh, you're going to weed. That's so interesting. Why are you weeding? But we will, freedom of choice. I can weed if I want, pick up socks if I want. I can do the dishes. And if I decide that, I'm going to take a break and let the kids eat in the TV room, like my home should just, when we think of augmented intelligence, this is not a peer-to-peer relationship. Like the human is always first.
Yeah.
Like I like to think of a conductor, like the human is conducting these amazing AI systems to do fantastic things. And this is all stemming back to the brain, because our brains, my hope is our kids or our grandkids, intellectually, they will accomplish much more than we ever did. Like like if we really went deep on like quantum mechanics or like biophysics, or like you list off a long range of very intimidating STEM fields, no human on Earth, like actually I take that back. There probably are some people on Earth that know a lot about all of those, but most normal people, they don't know a lot about all of those because they're very complicated topics. But I think our grandkids will know a lot more because education will be optimized. They will actually learn things in a way that's engaging. Like you can probably think of like lessons you've had in school. I got a really bad grade in linear algebra in college because the professor bored me out of my mind. It was so boring, and now I love that topic because I self-taught it later in an applied sense. But yeah, teachers are it's kind of a roulette, like teacher roulette.
Absolutely.
Ben, as we're slowly coming to the end of the show, my last question would be, what drives you? And I understand that you're very passionate about what you do and you enjoy the numbers and everything, but what is, I don't know, the vision or the ultimate goal?
So I really like trying things that haven't been tried before. And maybe I have this behavior where I'm very obsessed. So I'll get an idea and the idea can even be irrational, and I'll just obsess around it. And an example of that is when I went to college, I had this idea to live in the woods, to live in the snow all winter, and it got 15 below. And so I just did that. And it's not a good idea. It's maybe not the most rational thing to do, but that's an example where I'll get an idea and I'll really obsess about it. And that happens too in AI. So I have different passions that come and go. And so what I'm truly passionate about 5 years from now or 10 years from now might change. I think the general theme is the more we understand AI, the more we understand ourselves. And I think there's something, for me personally, there's something so exciting to just spend the rest of my life chasing the human mind. Like how can we be smarter? How can we be happier? How can we help other people more? How can you optimize your day? Yeah. And by optimize your day, some people might think the grinding approach, like how can I optimize my day to get 100-hour work week in 40 hours? Like, yeah, that's okay. But I feel like that's actually, you're missing the point, because life is much more broad than that. Like if you live life as a grinder and your kids don't know that you love them and you don't spend time on the trampoline and watching movies, then you're kind of a silly human being. Like you have to figure out this balance, and it's a complicated balance. But I guess the last thing to think about is you can imagine that life is like, and I know this is like, we're getting way off the rails with an AI conversation, but life is almost like, imagine if you had to do life over. Would you want to do life better? Like, think of the worst possible life you could have lived, like a sequence of the worst mistakes possible, where when you leave, people actually celebrate that you're gone. No one most people don't want to do that, because we have this like competitive spirit. So if I said, hey, there's two Georges and two parallel universes, one of them completely screws up life and makes a series of all the wrong decisions, and the other one does pretty good. Like when he leaves, people celebrate him being gone, or no, people don't celebrate him being, they're so glad for what he did and accomplished and all the good he did. Like, which parallel universe do you want to aspire to be like? And most people, we kind of have that. I love humans because we're competitive, but we're not competitive always in a way that's we're self-competitive. We want to run. We want to we want to be the best version of ourselves, but that's actually impossible. So we want to try to be. We don't want to be the worst version of ourselves.
That's true. Yeah, and I feel this really helped with our evolution and invention nature. I mean, we put some words together, we put it on the water, it floats. Okay, we're happy but not satisfied. Now we create a boat, same thing. Now we create a ship, and so forth and so on. And we keep want to grow.
Well, and empathy is a very fascinating trait that humans have, because humans do care for other humans. And I know we see terrible things in the world, and there's terrible news and stuff that we all wish wasn't there. But like, for the most part, humans have a lot of empathy. Like, they want to help other humans. And I think from an evolutionary perspective, that was quite important. If George is getting attacked by a lion, I imagine there were humans that tried to rally to prevent them from happening. And that's signs of a higher intelligent society. Like,
that's beautiful. Thank you very much, Ben,
Yeah.
for sharing your wisdom, both life and AI wisdom, and showing us that they are connected. And I wanted to thank everyone for being here, for contributing, for your questions, as always.
Yeah, and well, join us next week, and definitely follow Ben Taylor on LinkedIn if you're not already. And yes, unfortunately, we are at the end. It was too fast. It's always mesmerizing listening to Ben and having a conversation with him. So we hope to have you back in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
Ben. Have a beautiful weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.